All right, so you guys had asked me to record an explanation of this in-class exercise called a very big sum. And so this is what we'll be doing today. So let's run this first and let's see what the console is asking us to do. So it's asking us to input the number of how many integers we want to add up together. So I just want to add up 3 integers together. And since this is a long numbers, I'm gonna just add up a bunch of these. And of course I expect to see them, I expect to see 3 times, each amount that I added. And all right, so it's first asking us to add to tell it's asking us to tell the program, hey, how many numbers are you going to be adding up? And then it's letting us add them one by one. So first it gives you some sort of direction, then you give it the number of integers to add, and it saves them to the variable arcount, and then we're setting up an array called ints to add, and the length of this array is the arcount number that we passed on. And then there's a for loop here that is basically running a read line each time to add a number as many times as we asked it to. So again, if I run, I say, hey, I want to add 5 numbers together. I'm not going to get too crazy, so I'll just randomly hit my keyboard 5 times. But what's happening is the for loop is running. So far is run 3 times completely. So first iteration, I added 2,345. Second iteration, I added 76,445. Third iteration, I added 2,345. And we're currently in the middle of our 4th iteration of this loop as we add a 4th number, which I'll just add 9, and it's coming to a 5th, and this should be the last one. So once I click enter, it's going to finish this line of code. It's going to come back here. It's going to say our condition no longer meets because now I is 5 and I can't run this anymore. And then it's going to come back here. Ignore this for now. It's going to come here and it's going to pass on this array of integers that includes the values that we added. So it's going to come in here. This function gets called and the code gets immediately taken to line 28, well aware of our numbers that we added already. So it comes to this a very big sum function carrying our numbers, and we can double check. So I'm going to call console.writeLine. I'm going to call it empty just to give us a space in between our outputs. And then I'm going to have a for loop that runs as many times as there are items in our R array. And we're going to just print them out. And so what I expect to see is a break, and I expect to see my numbers come out a second time in the same order as I entered them. So let's see. So I just want to add 3 numbers, and I just want to add 9, 7, and 8. So we have our break, which is it's corresponding to line 28 now, and then we have our 9, 7, 8 because we're printing them out, so they're the correct numbers. And so what's happening now, it's okay, so we have this array that has the numbers that we entered before, and what we're going to do is we're going to add them up, and we're going to make sure that it's added up to a long, so that regardless of how large our numbers that we're adding up are, their sum will still be able to be computed. So we're coming here, we're looping through the items in our array, and we're adding them up, and we're just returning them. And maybe what's confusing to you guys is the function call. Maybe the function is what is confusing about it. But here in line 20, all we're saying is, hey, I want to be able to add up the numbers in the inst2add array, and I can just do that elsewhere. And so this space between line 26 and line 43 is our elsewhere. And what's happening is we're passing the array that the user defined, we're passing it as a parameter here. Inst2add is the parameter to our function, a very big sum. And this parameter is defined here in part of the definition of the function in line 26. And so when we call a very big sum with inst2add, R is identical to inst2add, and that we proved it here as we're printing out the elements in our array in this for loop, and it's coming back on the console on the right the same way. So let's say that I was serious about this, and I say I really want to add in really large numbers. So let's try it. Yep, that's a number that we can definitely still support as an integer, but perhaps the sum we would not be able to support it as an integer, and we definitely need a long. So what's going to happen is I'm going to click enter, which means that I'm going to be done adding up my integers to my array, and then we're going to come to line 20. Again, ignore line 17. We're going to come to line 20, and we're going to say, hey, I have this array of integers that my user added called inst2add, and I want to add them up, but I want to do that elsewhere. And that's where a very big sum function comes into place. So the code comes to this line, comes to this function call, and it immediately skips all the way to line 28. Again, aware of what AR is, what our array call AR is. It's the same values as inst2add. And so we should be able to see a break here coming from line 28, and then a replication of our values of this array, which is identical to inst2add. So I'm going to click enter, and we see the numbers here, and then we see the addition. And what happens is the addition is being actually printed out in line 22. So what happens is everything gets added up into this long total, and then we call the return function, and we say, hey, return this total, and it comes back to line 20, and it says long result, set it equal to what's coming back from our function, which is this very large number, and then we write it out. So in line 20, we're doing several things at once. We're declaring a long, and we're giving it a value. We're defining it as whatever comes back from the very big sum function. And what's happening is a very big function has access to our inst2add array via the parameter that was defined to be a string of ints already. And so with that in mind, we have the values of our array that the user inputted into our program, and then we're just adding them up, those values, and returning that sum, and we're setting that sum equal to result, and then we're printing it together. Is there anything that doesn't make sense about this? Send me an email. Talk to me. let me know. See you guys in class.